It's always welcome. To start off, I would just say that UPSC is a very attractive proposition. It's a great medium. Lakhs of people write this examination. It's regarded as one of the toughest exams in the world, rightfully so. The truth of the matter is that one of the reasons why it's called the toughest examination is because of the time duration that is involved. As you people, as all of you might already know, uh, it takes at least, yeah, if you were to clear the examination in your first attempt itself, that in itself would take a 2 year period, because it would take, let's say, 8 to 10 months for you to prepare. Then you give your preliminary examination, then you write your names, and then finally your interview comes in, which is officially referred to as the personality test. And then finally, the results come out. So if you were to write the 2021 examination, your preparation begins in this year, that is 2020. You write your prelims in 21, your mains also comes in 21, your interview comes the year after that, that's 2022, and the results also come in 22. So it's a 2 year long period, and probably that is the reason. But personally, I would say that the examination per se is not that tough because the syllabus is very clear and distinct. You have to. There are certain things as the popular perception goes. We're not meant to know everything under the sun. So that is a misconception, I would say. Like I said, the syllabus is quite clear. These are the things that we need to understand. There is general studies, there is an optional paper that we can choose among over 20 subjects. Then, if you can be disciplined and study according to the demand of the question papers and demand of UPSC, it wouldn't be a tough task for anybody to clear the examination. It really doesn't matter whether you were a topper in your past, your school or college life. As long as you're willing to give in your 100% into this examination, um, cakewalk would not be would be an understatement, but still, I would say that if you've put in the right amount of effort, you can definitely clear. So, just to go about, just to give you a brief to all you listeners, I would just like to tell you that today I would speak on my journey, or a basic 5 or 6 things that every aspirant must know, the myths and the mistakes that most people do so that you can avoid in your preparation. And then after 15 to 20 minutes, we can start off with a question answer session because I believe that will be more productive. That way, you can also feel that your queries have been answered. So I believe Akash would help me read out those questions, which you can post in the chat box. So to begin with, I would say the backbone of UPSC preparation is newspaper, because ultimately it's about knowing what is happening all around us, right? So newspaper is the best medium to know the happenings in your locality, in your state, in your country, all over the world. And it also gives you an analysis, a very good analysis of what uh, why things are happening, and why things are not happening the way it should be, or how to change things. All these things can be understood a lot through newspapers. So newspapers, like I said, is the backbone of UPSC preparation. Um, Specifically as well, when you prepare for current affairs, there would always be materials that are available which are released by academies, private institutions that prepare students for UPSC. But personally, I would suggest that you always start off with a newspaper, and then once you've managed to read the paper, make it a habit. Make it a habit that you read the paper, and then you move on to the current affairs materials. One more point that I would like to mention when it comes to newspapers is that um, whatever your mother tongue be, you could be a Malayali, you could be a Gujarati, you could be a Bengali, or your mother tongue could be Hindi. I would suggest, if you can find time, that once you read one English newspaper, one newspaper is more than enough. You could either go for Indian Express or you could go for the Hindu. But then the point is that uh, these papers are not published in a number of places. These are mostly found in metropolitan or tier 2 cities. So there may always be aspirants who come from let's say, the hinterlands of the country. So if that is the case, then as long as you have access to the internet, you can always read such newspapers online, right? So as I was saying, in addition to one English newspaper, I would always recommend you to read a local newspaper that comes in your mother tongue. So like I said, if your mother tongue is Hindi, you could probably read a Hindi newspaper as well. You just brief through it. You just scan through it. You need not put in a lot of effort. A 15 to 30-minute read would do. But then that really helps you understand the nuances of your locality as well. So if you're, like I said, a Malayali, like I come from Kerala, so I always used to make it a point to read the Malayali. If you're a Tamilian, a Tamil paper, Gujarati paper. So, whichever way, whichever place you come. So, that is when it comes to newspaper. So, like I said, newspaper is where you begin. So the biggest question I've always heard people and aspirants ask me is where to begin. So I would say begin by making newspaper reading a habit. So that's point number one. Point number two would be um, NCRTs, which is basically the prescribed textbooks for CBSE syllabus. Um, Generally, when I used to prepare, we used to cover textbooks from 6 to 10 of all subjects. But I would say more or less you can cover textbooks from 8 to 12, 6 to 12. Sorry, so 8 to 12 would do basically. You can read through science, history, geography, um, all these sociology textbooks are available for class 11th and 12th. So if you can read through these NCRT textbooks thoroughly, at least let's say 3 to 5 times, and make notes appropriately. Don't start making notes in your first reading itself, because if you look at it logically, the first time you're reading a textbook, though we must have all of us read these textbooks during our school days, but since years later, it becomes very difficult to recall a lot many things that are mentioned here. So in that scenario, I would recommend you to read at least once or twice the same textbook before you start making notes out of it. That is the second part. So the second part is that, and Akash, am I audible? In case there's any problems midway, please let me know. Akash, are you
Sir,
there?
you are audible, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Audible, sir.
And in case I need to pause this video, how do I do that?
Uh, there is a video button
Yeah, got it,
right next to the
got
mic
it.
button.
Got it. All right, fine. So, thanks, Akash. Anyway, so to continue, NCRTs are very important. Go through them from starting from 8 to 12 thoroughly and make notes appropriately. The third part, I would say, is the optional, right? So, I might have to pause this video for a second. Just hold on. All right, Akash, please wait. Give me 1 minute.
Yeah, guys, if you have any queries like Sir will answer your questions, you can put in YouTube live chat.
Extremely sorry for that delay. Yeah, so where did I stop? 2 points. First point being the newspaper, and the second point being um, NCRTs. Now, the third most important part when it comes to UPSC preparation is your optional. So, the optional subject can, as they say in popular parlance, can make or break your career, because the way you choose your optional subject and the way you put in the amount of effort you put into it would determine whether you make it to the list, to the final list, and more importantly, whether you make it to the final service that you aspire to be a part of. So now you might already know that UPSC examination is basically about three stages. It starts out with the preliminary, a mains, and an interview. Uh, the preliminary is just a qualifying paper, but it's the mains that actually determines your ranks, because it's the marks that you obtain in your mains examination is what is calculated for your final list along with your interview marks. Right. So when coming back to your optional, you have two optional papers of 250 marks each. Now, I generally tell people that please take right when you start preparing itself. Don't just jump into some optional subject, because somebody else is also. Just hold on for a second, 1 second. Sorry for that. Um, so, Akash, I'm audible, I hope.
Yes, sir, you're audible, sir.
Yeah. So coming back, optional part. Um, mm, Take at least 1 to 2 months to dig into all the available optional subjects for a UPSC aspirant. At least 1 to 2 months, and speak to your friends. Try to understand whether you have a passion for that subject. For instance, my optional subject was public administration, and the reason I took it was because I really liked it. When I went through its syllabus, when I went through the previous year question papers, I felt it's a subject that I could relate to. And also because the way I thought was, um, if I am to be a public administrator in future, I must have a good grasp of public administration as a theory as well. Now that was my thinking, and that was just my way of trying to convince myself as to why I should take that subject. But every subject has its own pros and cons, including public administration. So if you can understand what the pros and cons are, and then still go about it the way the UPSC wants us to study it, then you can definitely garner the required number of marks to clear the examination. So ideally speaking, in the current scenario, you should aim to score at least a 300 plus in your two optional subjects in order to get a really good rank. Of course, the marks in your general studies would also matter, but more or less, people who have scored 300 plus in their optional subjects have always managed to get into the final UPSC rank list. So that is your aim. And so, like I said, option is a very important aspect. Please give it a lot of time. Some people might argue that, let's say, these in the past couple of years, a particular subject is not doing well. People have not been scoring well, so please don't go about it. But then, personally, I would say always go by your heart and brain. So, if your heart, listen to your heart first, and then list down at least the top three subjects that you would like to study, and then you make use of your brain and decide which is the, let's say, like I said, a subject that is pretty scoreable in the UPSC. So it could be a humanities subject such as sociology or anthropology. It could be a literature subject, Hindi literature, Malayalam literature, anything. At the same time, you could go for science subjects like maths or physics, or if you have a background in engineering, you could go for, let's say, civil engineering, mechanical engineering, or if you've been a medicine student, medical student, you could go for medicine, or any other, like I said, humanities subjects. So whatever you decide, the most important aspect when it comes to option is that you should not regret it later. Really hope, I really pray that all of you people attending this session be serious aspirants and then manage to clear the examination in the future. But the point being that, God forbid, but if you do not manage to, let's just assume a scenario that wherein you write the examination next year and then you manage to get into the final list, but you have not got the service that you wanted. Right? Let's say you get a rank of, let's say, around 300, 350, 400. In that case, most probably you would want to write the examination again. Even if that is the case, I would say that don't blame it on your optional subject. Don't change your subject just because you could not manage to score, that high in your optional subject. Because when you look back, you've put in a lot of effort, lot many hours into it. You would probably put in at least 800 to 1,000 hours into your optional subject alone in your attempt. So it's very important that you make use of it, and that is the reason I said that take a lot of time in choosing which optional subject you should go for, and once you do, don't look back. So that is the whole idea of choosing your options. Now, fourth point for the day is we must always look at UPSC as a continuum, as in prelims, mains, and interview should not be seen as three separate parts. They are one and the same. What you prepare for your preliminary examination would be applicable to your mains. What you prepare for your mains and prelims would also be applicable for your final personality test or your interview. So this is perhaps this mindset is so important that more or less I've seen people prepare for prelims alone first, and then immediately after prelims they start to prepare for mains, and end up not scoring high in their mains because their focus for the last part, let's say let's say 8 to 10 months prior to prelims, had only been on prelims. So avoid making that mistake, and instead try to have a balanced viewpoint while you're preparing for your prelims itself. Try to cover up your optional subject and GS. Ideally speaking, let's take the scenario of next year's examination 2021. You should probably be studying your optional subject right now along with your general studies. So if you could finish, usually prelims are held in the month of, let's say, May, June, July, right? So ideally you should finish your optional subject thoroughly at least once prior to your prelims. So let's say by December, Jan of that particular year, and then slowly move into your general studies paper for mains, and side by side you should also prepare for prelims. Then at least 100 days prior to your prelims, you could devote completely to your preliminary examination, and post your prelims, take a, let's say, a week or so off, and then you can start off with your mains preparation. So that's how it goes. So like I said, it's very important that you have an attitude wherein you consider all the three stages as a continuum, okay, and not as separate parts. So this mentality would help you connect all different elements of this preparation. It could be the syllabus, it could be the question papers, it could be the way you answer the questions that come. It could even be when you finally go for your interview, when you sit in front of the interview panel, when they ask questions, they expect you to have a holistic viewpoint, and that can come only with this mentality of having a how do we put it, an eagle's view. Okay, so that is very important that you look at all the three stages as a single continuum. The final point before I end my talk and then we move on to questions is the aspect of question papers. Now, the enemy in front of us is UPSC, right? Okay, so if I may call it the enemy, so we have to beat the enemy, right? Or we have to win over UPSC to convince them that you're worth being an administrator, a civil servant. Now, the how do we beat it? By answering the questions that come in the question paper. So it's very important to understand the kind of questions that are asked in both prelims and mains, and finally the interview that comes later anyway. And anyway, if always remember this tenet, this principle, that if you have knowledge enough to clear prelims, it means that you're worth clearing mains. And if you're worth clearing mains, it also means that you're worth clearing the interview stage. So have this mentality as well. Okay, just because you manage to clear prelims, don't let the pressure bog you down. Don't feel that okay, the competition is too much and that you can't really face it. You always remember that you can always have that self confidence to go forward. Anyway, coming back, so the question papers. So ideally, you should at least go through the previous 5 years question papers in both your general studies and optional paper. Optional paper, the more the better. You could at least refer to the previous 10 or 15-year question papers. But for general studies, at least the previous 5 years, so that you get an idea as to what kind of questions come. Uh, because, like I said in the beginning of this lecture, the idea is not to know everything under the sun. Though UPSC expects us to be a generalist, what it wants us is to be able to address the question specifically. So let's say if the question is, what are the socio-economic political reasons as to why India has not been able to eradicate poverty despite, let's say, 70, 75 years post-independence. The question is very clear and distinct. They're asking for social, economic, and political reasons why we have not been able to eradicate poverty, right? So you have to jot down the social reasons, the economic reasons, and the political reasons, okay? And these have to be specific and separate in your answer. So this is how you write an answer. This is how you should approach the question paper. So when you look at a question like this, well, unless and until you go through the previous question papers and unless and until you practice answer writing, you will never get an idea. Please don't have the assumption that just by reading everything and mugging up certain facts and figures and all the information available out there, and then not practicing answer writing at all, and then on the final day of the examination you can just straight away go start writing. It's not practically possible. Please, I don't think there's anybody in the civil service right now who could have cleared the examination not having practiced answer writing regularly. So please keep this in mind. Like I said, the previous year question papers are very important. The syllabus is also something that you should be thorough with, because even while, let's say, while reading the newspaper, you should be able to understand, all right, a certain topic comes, then you should be able to link it to the particular topic in the syllabus that's given. So please be thorough with those syllabus in the previous year question papers. UPSC, as it's popularly called, is referred to as the Unpredictable Service Commission, because it's not at all predictable. No matter what gyan I give you through this lecture, it could come up with total surprises in the next year's question paper, and that is what makes this examination all the more beautiful. Because you could say in a way that, and like I said, this could be one of the reasons why it's still the toughest, because nobody knows what surprises that UPSC is going to come up in this examination. So please keep it in mind that it's not an easy task, because the time duration is very long, but it's definitely possible provided you are able to put in a discipline timetable. You are able to follow a disciplined timetable, and you're able to commit yourself to it. And please be responsible enough. We are all, I'm pretty sure you are all mature enough to understand that this is high time we have to make a career for ourselves. Please don't depend on our family too much, and instead, if we have to make a mark of ourselves in this world, then we have to take up responsibility. So this is how you go about. And if Akash could now help me, we could go through the questions if there are any.
Okay, sir. There are few
If there
questions.
are, yeah. All right.
Yeah, I'll read it for you,
Do
sir.
I view the questions, or would you be reading through it?
Uh, I'll read it for you, sir.
Sure, sure, sure.
Coaching require. Sorry. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, yeah, you very much audible. Yeah,
1 second, sir.
sure, sure.
Question number 1: whether
Yeah.
coaching is necessary for cracking UPSC?
All right, good question. Um, Now, I would say, this is again my personal opinion. If you do not have any financial constraints at home, I would recommend you attending any coaching institution, a good one specifically. You'll have to do a bit of research on that. Attend a good one. Now, the advantage, I'll tell you the advantages as well as the disadvantage, and also both sides of not attending a coaching institution as well. Now, the advantage of attending a coaching institution is that classes in a coaching institution is that you would be always in the thick of things, right? You would always have people uh, preparing alongside you who are serious aspirants. So you would know how competitive this world is, how competitive the examination is. You would, the majority of the time in a day, in within the 24 hours of your day, you would constantly be thinking of civil service alone. When you're, within that friend circle, within that institution's four walls. So the advantage, like I said, is that you would always be in the thick of things, and it will keep you motivated. When you see other people preparing, when you see other people scoring better than you would want to beat them, because it's a healthy competition, right? So at the end of the day, you always have to remember it's a healthy competition. Over 10 lakh students appear for this examination, but only around 1,000 seats are vacant every year. So if you want to manage to be a part of that, then you have to put in a lot of hard work. And motivating oneself internally is always way more difficult than motivating oneself externally, right? So when you see externally your friends and your other aspirants preparing, putting, let's say, 10 to 12 hours a day, that's pretty motivating in itself. So I would say, if you do not have any financial constraints, definitely go and attend a social institution. But in this era of internet, in this age of information, almost everything is available for free online as well. So if you can, like I said, be able to motivate yourself and also follow a certain pattern by going through, let's say, blogs of toppers. Like, for instance, my dear friend Arvind Shetty, who was the first time holder in my batch, has a beautiful blog written. So you could always go through that. It's a very beautifully written blog as to how to prepare. So if you're able to prepare yourself, well and good. Okay, but I would at least suggest try to attend test series in academies, because that would help you know where you stand. Ultimately, it's a competitive examination. For instance, let's say if in an exam out of 100 you score 90, it's a good mark. But if out of 100 people, more than 50 people have scored more than 90, and you have scored 90, then it means that competitively speaking, you have done poorly, right? So ultimately the objective is to do better than the rest. Only then can you be a part of the top 1,000 or whatever the vacancy in that particular year is. So I hope you've been able to answer your question. Next, Akash.
Question number 2. Sir,
Mhm.
can you describe your interview experience?
Okay. So my interview was in 2018. To be precise, it was on April 19th. I was fortunate enough to be able to score really good marks, and I was the national topper for that year. There were two of us who managed to be the national topper. We scored 206 out of 275. Interviews are always of 275, and in the last 4 or 5 years, there has been a rule that even the toppers in interview would be given only 75% of the total marks. So 75% of 275 is 206. So that's the score I was fortunate enough to get, along with one other friend of mine who was from Arunachal Pradesh. So there were two toppers that year. Now, interview, as the general perception goes, is not the toughest stage. Personally, I feel it could also be because I managed to do well. I feel prelims is always the toughest phase, and mains happens to be the second toughest, and interview is comparatively easier. Because the way I thought, or the way my thought process went, was that in prelims the options are already given, so we don't have the liberty to explore. You have to choose within the four walls of four options, right? Whereas in mains, again, there is a constraint of time and space, wherein, let's say, for every question, you're given 2 pages and you have to write your answer within 150 words. And now that's very funny, right? Because you put in months of effort, reading tons of material. You would have this much of let's say books to read through, and all that information only to concise them into a 150 word answer. So it's a very big irony that way. So that's, like I said, mates. Again, you have a constraint. But when it comes to your interview, you can open your arms and you can spread your wings as much as possible, because the moment the interview panel members ask you a question, you have the liberty to answer the way you want to. Now, one important thing that you have to remember is that you have to be as articulate as possible. You have to be very precise. Like I said, technically and officially speaking, it's not called an interview. It's called a personality test. Why? Because they are not sitting there to gauge your knowledge base. Because that is something you've already managed to prove through your prelims and mains. It's only if you manage to clear them both can you get an opportunity to go for an interview. So their objective is basically to gauge your personality, right? So when we say personality, what they're trying to look at is whether you are, in very simple words, whether you are worth being a civil servant. Okay. So when they ask you questions, they expect you to answer like a bureaucrat or a civil servant. Okay. So when you walk into the interview room itself, your objective should be to, to think and assume that you're already a civil servant, and then answer the questions appropriately. Always take a moderate view. Never try not to take extremist views. Uh, you know, these are all logical things. When you sit there, give them a certain amount of respect, wish them good morning, and don't be in a hurry to answer. Let them complete the question. If you need time to think, always take freedom to ask them, sir or ma'am. I would like a few seconds to think about it. So always be respectful towards them. So I had a friend of mine, Mr. Ren Abraham. I always quote him in most of my such talks. So he's also in the IRS. He's in IRS Customs, and he's a 2013 batch officer. He's very senior to me, but a very dear friend of mine. So right before I went for my interview, I happened to meet him, and he gave me a tip to attend the interview. And he said, it's actually okay to be. It's very okay for all of us to be a little bit scared, a little bit anxious, a little bit, you know, a, s- uh, a small amount of fear is expected from us, because otherwise we would be, meta humans probably, or superheroes that way, because we are all humans at the end of the day. When you're going to attend the UPSC interview, just imagine the kind of the people who are going to sit in the panel. They're people with 30, 40 years of experience, and they've seen a whole lot of world more than us, and we must respect that experience and age. And so Mr. Ren told me right before my interview that when you walk in, imagine those people sitting in the interview panel to be your grandparents' friends. And I was surprised. Oh, your grandparents' friends. So he said the idea was that when you speak to your grandparents' friends, could be grandfather's friends or grandmother's friends, uh, they are also obviously of their age, right? They could be in their, probably 60s or 70s or whatever. So when you speak to them, you would always give them a huge amount of respect because of their age and because they are your grandparents' friends and they are like your grandparents only. At the same time, uh, you could be a little bit friendly with them. You don't have to be completely formal. In a sense, I hope you take it in the right manner. Doesn't mean that you can just go there and speak rubbish. It just means that you have the liberty to open up a little bit, right? You might have seen that most of us are always closer to our grandparents than our own parents, right? As we grow up, particularly during our teenagers and all, we would always find ourselves closer to our grandparents than our own parents. I was like that. I was always closer to my grandparents than my parents because I could divulge a lot of things happening in my life to them, share it with them. So that is the advice that Mr. Ren gave, and somehow I was able to do that. And when I went, it helped. And my interview lasted for almost 40-45 minutes. And usually there is a general assumption that if your interview lasts long, it either means that you've really spoiled it because they did not like you at all, or you've done spectacularly good. And because we are all humans, I had a really bad notion because my interview lasted for 45 minutes, like I said. When I walked out of the interview room, I was pretty scared because I actually had negative thoughts. I thought, okay, I probably screwed up my interview and done really well. Done really bad, and probably that is the reason they made me sit for that long. I was very scared, but at the same time, I was confident enough. At least looking back, I can feel so. There were a number of questions to which I couldn't answer. Um, there were questions to which I said I don't know because these are all things that they expect us to be. Because it's not possible for us to know everything in this Google age. But when you don't know something, just admit that you don't know. But always portray an image of yourself that you are open to ideas, you're open to change, and you also have the willpower and the energy to change the world. Yeah, Akash. So that's my interview experience. Shall we move on to the next question?
Uh, so we'll go with the third question.
Okay.
And most of the people are asking, what was your optional subject?
Yeah, my optional subject is public administration, which I already mentioned in my talk. So, like I said, my optional subject, I chose public administration because I felt uh, to be a public administrator, you need to know public administration. But like I said, every subject has its own pros and cons. So there is no hard and fast rule that just because you happen to listen to a particular topper's talk, you should go by that optional. Again, be open to all ideas. You could either, if you have let's say, a degree in history, you could always choose to go with history because you've already spent 3 to 5 years into studying that subject. Or let's say, I've seen doctors, medical doctors who've done even MD and come and write the examination with medicine as an optional subject. I've even seen doctors who have not chosen medicine and instead gone for humanities subjects. So just remember what I said in the beginning of this lecture regarding choosing your option subjects. It's very crucial. There are two papers, 250 marks each, 500 marks. You just make sure that you choose it wisely.
Yeah. Question number 4. So I'm
Mhm.
studying second year of engineering. Can I
Okay.
start my PSC preparation now?
Did you say second year?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So second year, absolutely. What did you say? Second year engineering or what degree?
Engineering, sir.
Engineering. All right. So engineering is a four-year course. Ideally, I would say you should start preparing during your final year, whatever degree you're doing. Your preparation should ideally start at the end of or during your mid final year, because See, the point is that because it's a very the time duration. Again, I would like to emphasize the time duration because it's a very long process. It takes almost 1 to 2 years into it. In giving one attempt alone, uh, there is a possibility that we might get exhausted. So, my dear friend who's in second year engineering, I would recommend you start off with reading newspapers, which is like anyway a good thing to do if you're aware as to what all things are happening around you. So read the newspaper regularly right now, and once you reach your final year, that is your fourth year, that time you may start preparing for UPSC specifically. So just imagine if you manage to read the newspaper regularly on a day-to-day basis for the next 2 years until you reach your fourth year, I'm pretty sure you would be really good at your your knowledge base on current affairs would be really good, provided you read it regularly in a disciplined manner. So I would say right now, don't start preparing for UPSC per se, but just keep it in your head and keep motivating yourself. Read a lot of books. Read as many books as possible. I always recommend reading 30 to 50 books a year. I am an avid reader. I love books, so I always try to finish off 30 to 50 books a year. Uh, at the same time, read newspaper, read magazines, try to watch good news channels, and try to understand what's happening. Have your own viewpoints. This is the time where you groom yourself. You groom yourself into having the right mindset. So once you come of age, when you come of age, and once you uh, become eligible to write for the examination when you reach your final year, that time you could go through the syllabus. And because see, also you also need to understand that UPSC might even change the syllabus. You never know, right? It could change the syllabus next year. It could come up with a, let's say, a radical proposition the year after. They could even remove options of it. You never know, right? UPSC is always unpredictable, like I said. So we wouldn't want to take that risk this early. Just imagine if you've if you're in second year and if you've started taking if you've taken sociology as your optional subject and you've gone through that entire thing, and if 2 years later they've eliminated let's say optional subjects, and all that effort would go down the drain. So I would not ideally recommend you to start studying now, but instead, like I said, read through newspapers and books. Okay, Akash, next question.
How many attempts we will get to crack UPSC? Like, is there any limit?
Okay, is there any limit? These are all technical stuff. For general category students, there are 6 attempts. But if you have reservation, it moves on to 9, 12. It goes on like that. For general category, it's 6. But
Yeah.
don't try to wait for 6 years to clear the examination. All of you, it's my humble request to take things seriously and keep it in mind that you have to clear in your first attempt itself. Okay.
And uh, my family needs me to do a job, and I want to crack UPSC. How to proceed if I take up a job and then prepare for UPSC?
Okay, good question. Now, there are a number of people who have prepared while working and managed to clear the examination with really good ranks as well. I have my people in my own batch. I have seniors, first-hand experience of having met seniors who've done that. So that should never bog you down. Now, if your parents are very adamant, I would say try to convince your parents to give you at least one chance to give the examination without having any job. But if you do not manage to do that, if you are forced into a job, please don't worry. You can always manage to find 2 to 4 hours a day. Whatever job you're doing, try to have a timetable that is suitable for you to find time to start preparing. So I would say at least try to manage 2 to 4 hours. Ultimately, it's up to you. Ultimately, it's up to you how you manage your work life and your preparation life. So just trying to manage that time. And even I've seen there are people. There are generally assumptions that you have to put in 10 to 12 hours a day, which is sort of true. I wouldn't deny that. You need to put in a lot of time into this, but we must also understand that. People have different IQs, right? For instance, I'm a slow reader. I take time to grasp things, right? So if I take, let's say, 4 hours to understand or read through, let's say, 50 pages of something, or let's say 20 pages of something, to 4 hours to read through it, somebody else with a better IQ might take just 1 hour. Okay, so that is something that only you can do. You can know, how quickly you can grasp things. So even when you're reading something, Don't try to look at it as a huge amount of pressure on you. Don't think there's so much to read and so much to complete and I'm not able to manage that. Always have to always try to focus on, as they say, the famous philosophy called Nishkama Karma, which is that always focus on your goal. Don't, bother about the consequences as such. Just focus on your goal and follow Nishkama Karma, just read through it. So my answer to your question being, even if you're working, try to manage at least 2 to 4 hours a day. Just read through the newspapers and read the NCRTs one by one. Go through the question papers regularly, and if you have weekends off, you have again like at least you can manage 10 to 20 hours during every weekend again. So that would be ample time for you to prepare for your preparation along with your job. Yeah. Next question, Akash.
Uh, I want to take commerce and accountancy as optional, but I am unable to find info on internet as very less people choose. Please tell a few steps that can actually help.
Your voice broke in between, Akash. Could you repeat that question?
Yes, sir. I want to take commerce and accountancy as optional,
Okay.
but I am unable to find more info on internet.
Yeah, you are unable to
Find more info on internet.
internet. Okay.
Can you please suggest few sites that can actually help?
Sites, but my option was not commerce, so I don't think I will be able to help you much on that. You'll have to probably search online again, or just try to search for toppers who had taken commerce as their optionals. So I think that would be the best way, because since my option was so bad, I'm sorry, I really won't be able to help you in that. Akash, next question.
Sir, what is
Yeah,
the ideal time to crack UPSC in first attempt?
ideal time to crack.
UPSC in first attempt.
Ideal time to crack. Okay, did I hear that question correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So, ideal time to crack is now. I mean, whatever your age be, if you're eligible to write the examination, I would say just go for it. Just write the examination. If you've, they say 50% of the job is done once you've decided to attempt for the appear for the examination itself. So the moment you convince yourself that you want a career in civil services, just go for it. Then don't look back. So I would say the ideal time is now. Now, right now.
And good morning, sir. I have
Mhm.
started preparation for UPSC and completed my NCRT and started with higher books. What is the way forward? I'll be giving my exam in 2022.
2022. Yeah, so same thing. Whatever I said in the talk, I think since you have 2 years left in your bag, I would say you have ample time to prepare yourself mentally as well as physically to prepare. 2022 is a long time ahead. 2 years are left. Make a plan for yourself. Make a strategy in such a way that you're able to complete the syllabus, your optional subject, everything accordingly. All those points that I've mentioned in the beginning of my lecture, when it comes to your optional paper, your newspaper, NCRTs, all those things, be disciplined and then follow that. And if possible, also join a good institution, either in Delhi or any other place. Even online classes would do. Since these days, it being COVID times, it might not be possible for you to physically go and join an academy. But I'm pretty sure all those institutions are running online courses. So, ideally speaking, I would say, if possible, do attend a class.
Sir, luck versus hard work in UPSC.
I don't really believe in luck. I think hard work is the only reason why I am also sitting here and giving a talk. So don't really believe in luck. I would say, like I said, focus on your goals, focus on your work, and if you can convince yourself that you deserve it because you've put in the right amount of effort, you can definitely clear. So I would say don't bother about luck. Don't bother about things which are not in your control. That's the whole idea. If at all you want to believe in luck, luck is anyway not in your control. So why bother? So don't even bother about it. And so just put in your effort. Just study hard and convince yourself that you're worth it, and go ahead.
Sir, how many years you took for cracking UPSC?
Okay, I cleared in my third attempt. In my first attempt, I couldn't clear my prelims. Second attempt, I wrote my first mains, but I couldn't get an interview call. And it was finally in my third attempt that I managed to clear. But because of that experience, I can always tell you that um, it doesn't really take that much of time if you've got the right mentorship. I wouldn't blame it on anybody, because I would like to blame it on myself for having taken three attempts. But with experience, I can tell you that one attempt is more than enough for you to clear the examination and get the, you know, every year these days, in fact, the first rank holders are first attempters. So all the, a number of people in the top 10 ranks itself are first time attempters, first timers. So I don't really think it takes that much time if you have the right guidance and if you follow the right path, just do smart work. That would be enough.
And moving forward,
Mhm.
how do we choose the books for the optionals? There are many books available under the same topic with different authors.
I would say, see, there will always be a number of books, but if you go through, make use of the internet as much as possible. So what I'm saying is that just go through a number of toppers' blogs or websites. Their blogs would have a prescribed set of books that you need to read. So more or less, 80 to 90% of the textbooks that are available are read by every aspirant, including the ones who clear the examination. For instance, let's say and also we always begin with NCRT. That is the reason I mentioned the importance of NCRT. Once you start off with NCRT, and if you manage to study them and understand them thoroughly, you would have a very good base. You would have a very good base. So you would have a very good base to start off with, right? So after that, when you start reading, you can always, like for instance, for polity, it's Lakshmikant. Lakshmikant is an author whose polity book is the most read, most sought after book by every aspirant. You don't even need to look beyond that. You just know that book is enough to score high. And I'm pretty sure that every 1 or 2 years they come up with a new edition, because that's the number of times that the book is released and bought by people, because of the sheer number of aspirants out there. So I would suggest, to answer this question, you make use of Google. At least see 3 to 4 book lists of different toppers, um, including, like I said, Anveed Shetty's blog is also there, and other toppers' book list, and then identify the common books that are mentioned in all of their book lists. And I'm pretty sure 80 to 90% would be the same. So once you identify the book list, then you can buy them and read through them.
So, what is the current affairs time period? 18 months or 12 months is fine, or even more is required for preparing for current affairs.
I would say that's a good question. I would say 12 months is more than enough. I would say ideally the time period would be starting from the previous year's prelims. Let's say, since this year's prelims was an exception because it was COVID. Usually the prelims is held in the month of, let's say, May, June, or July, right? So take June as a benchmark. So if you're writing the exam in 2021, start off current affairs starting with 2020 June. So you would have your next prelims in the year month of June or July 2021 for 12 months. 12 months would be more than enough. But even after prelims, you'll have to anyway continue reading it for your mains as well as your interview. So 12 months. 12 months is a good enough period for current affairs.
So, can you explain me about the mains examination? What paper is very tough to right?
Did you say mains?
Mains, sir.
Mains. Okay. There is no tough. There is no concept of tough and easy. I think all question papers are of the same metal, of the same quality. So ideally, there are technically speaking, there are 9 papers, out of which 2 are just qualifying, which is basically one English paper and one regional language paper. So your marks would be counted in the remaining 7, out of which there would be one essay for GS papers, and 2 optional subject papers. So these are the 7 papers whose marks are really counted. So I wouldn't say there is any particular paper that is tough or easy, but I would say divide your timetable in such a way that you are able to put in time for your essay as well as general studies. I've seen a number of people who ignore essay, so try not to avoid that. Try not to do that mistake. Make sure that you practice essay writing at least once or twice a month, so that you get a hang of it. Because though it might seem easy, again I repeat, don't assume that even if you don't practice answer writing, you can just straight away go into the exam hall and start writing the answer paper. So try to avoid that, and instead practice answer writing on a regular basis. Like I said, essay is a very scoreable paper. If you can manage to score a 150 plus in your essay, again, like I said, 300 plus in your optional paper means that you'll more or less be in the list. Similarly, 150 plus in essay also means that you'll more or less be in the final list. So make sure that you practice answer writing. There is no particular paper that is tough or easy. There are 4 general studies papers. The first paper is quite static. It deals with history, society, and geography. The second, third, and fourth papers are dynamic. Second paper deals with governance and constitution. The third paper deals with economic development, and the fourth paper deals with morals and ethics. If at all I were to choose, like in my preparation phase, I used to find the ethics paper the toughest because I never managed to score really high in my fourth paper, but I did reasonably well in the other three. So yeah, that's the answer.
And sir, I have 2 years for graduation. So my problem is that I study some subjects like economics, and after 2 years, it is very difficult to remember everything. So what's your advice on this issue?
I think practice, keep revising as much as possible. Um, Make concise notes. Don't more or less. The point is that what I've learned, one of the biggest lessons I've learned through my UPSC preparation is that everybody would have their own strategy. Every topper, every aspirant has one's own strategy. Though I've given you a lot of gyan through this talk, please don't follow my strategy alone. Make your own strategy. You can listen to as many toppers as well, as many toppers as you can, but ultimately you will have to walk the path, right? So you have to create your own strategy. So I would say, just to avoid forgetting things, the only way to do is keep revising them. Revise them as regularly as possible. Keep revising. Make concise notes. Take time to read and understand. Don't just read through them. Uh, I would think revision is the best form of remembering and recalling things. And the more number of tests that you give, that will also test your brain. It's like keeping your body healthy. So in order to keep your body healthy, you need to go for jogging and other exercises, right? Same way, if you want to keep your brain healthy, you would have to keep working on it. You have to keep testing it. So test the water as much as possible, and I'm pretty sure that you will be able to remember. And always remember, like I said, people have different IQs. Just because your friend is able to remember better doesn't mean that you won't be able to clear. It just means that that person has a better IQ. So you don't need to feel bad about it. You might have to put in, let's say, 2 additional revisions to remember things. So just don't feel let down because of that.
So one final question.
Okay.
One person is asking about CSAT strategy.
What strategy?
CSAT.
Okay, CSAT, all right. See, CSAT is, for those of you who don't know what CSAT is, our prelims examination has 2 papers. So first one is the general studies paper of 200 marks, 100 questions. And the second paper is 80 questions, 200 marks, CSAT. It is generally referred to as CSAT paper, but UPSC calls it paper 2. Now, the CSAT paper basically has mathematical aptitude and English comprehension questions. Okay. Now, paper 2, till a few years back, the qualifying paper, people had to qualify both the papers. That is, the total of paper 1 plus paper 2 was considered for you to qualify the prelims, so that you get an opportunity to write names. But due to certain protests a few years back, I think in 2015 or 16, 15, I believe, paper 2 was made just qualifying. That is, after 200 marks, you only need to score 66 marks, right? That is one third of the total. So once you manage to score 66, 67, just manage to cross the threshold, then your paper 1 marks are taken into consideration to decide whether you're you have qualified the prelims or not. So CSAT, because it has been made nearly qualifying, UPSC has raised the standards of the question that comes for CSAT. Mathematical aptitude questions, and particularly the comprehension, has become quite tricky at times, and I wouldn't say it's an easy work. So for those of you who find it difficult to uh, practice, and one more point I must add is that the mathematical questions, the aptitude-based questions that come in your CSAT paper is more or less of class 10th base. That's it. You just need to be good at the 10th standard mathematics level. That's all. So which is not a big thing to do, I'm pretty sure. So all you have to do is, if you feel that you're weak in maths or English, just keep practicing. There are ample number of books available that focus on CSAT, on both comprehension as well as mathematics. So because since the answers to comprehension can never be gauged you know, as 1 or 0, because see, mathematical questions, maths questions would have a short answer, right? So once you get an answer, you would know that this is the answer and it can't change. 1 plus 1 is always equal to 2. That way, so always try to score maximum number of marks in your maths questions. So that should be your strategy. So for CSAT, like I said, there are ample number of books available in the market. Practice as many questions as possible. Read through as many comprehension sort of questions as possible, and I'm pretty sure you'll be able to manage 66.
That's the end of the question, sir. And
Okay.
one final one from my side, sir.
Okay.
Give us one pro tip to prepare for UPSC. Pro tip.
Pro tip. All right. I'll give you two, in fact. Okay. So one is slightly motivation based, but before that, I would say one thing that I've always found lacking in the number of aspirants is that they don't try to improve their personality. Okay, and one of the best ways to improve your personality is by reading books. So, like I said in the middle of this session, I said read as many books as possible. Though I gave a number as 30 to 50, trust me, the kind of change that would come into you if you read 30 to 50 books a year would be immense. Imagine yourself 1 year down the line, next year on October 10th, if you've managed to read, let's say, 30 to 50 books, trust me, you would be a different person altogether. So I would say, in addition to your UPSC preparation, always read as many books as possible side by side. It need not necessarily be in English. It could be in any language. If you're comfortable reading it in, let's say, Malayalam, Tamil, Hindi books, no problem whatsoever. Just read books. Books are this sea of knowledge, this sea of, it just gives you totally different perspectives to do. So I would say reading books actually supplements your preparation, your UPSC preparation in an immense way. I can't even explain it through words how my habit of reading books has helped me in my UPSC preparation. So that is one major tip that I would give you. Secondly, I would say, like I said, it's quite philosophical to say put this way. Um, Always remember that your life is your responsibility alone, right? So if it's your responsibility, take up all your failures and your successes as your own. Okay? So as I say, own up responsibility for your failures and share your successes with everybody. So make sure that you take life seriously, take it with a lot of responsibility. Don't take too much of pressure on yourself. Though I mean, it's I wouldn't deny the fact that even I have felt pressure during my preparation phases, but luckily I managed to overcome them. I kept motivating myself. So self confidence is very important. Always believe that you can do it. Always try to have positive thoughts. Force yourself to have positive thoughts. Do positive things. Always engage in things. In this digital age, I've seen people are more social than physical, because you might have 5,000 friends in your Facebook account, but then if you ask how many friends you have in your physical world, it might not even be 10 in number. So it's very important that you be physically social as much as possible than digitally social. So live a positive life that way. That would also keep your mind and brain happy. And more importantly, that will make you stand apart. Because since the whole world is going digital and spending a lot of time, I'm not criticizing social media. Please don't misunderstand me. Social media has its own pros, and it's a very good medium as well. But we all always need to understand where the line ends, right? So if you want to make a career for yourself, if you aspire to be a civil servant, an IS officer, an IPS officer, an IRS officer, whatever it be, remember that the responsibility lies in you. So keep yourself motivated and believe that you can do it. That's my tip to you, Akash, and on the rest of the aspirants.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much, entire team of Resolve Talks, as well as so many students who are there in the YouTube live.
Thank you so
And
much, Akash. Thank you so much to all the organizers of this event. It was wonderful to be here and be able to speak to all of you guys. I hope I was able to answer all of your questions. I'm pretty sure
yes,
there are people whose questions are still unanswered, but always be open to such talks. There would always be ample time and medium to access such proper talks. And just, I hope and pray, my heartful wishes and prayers to all of you that I hope to see you in the next years of the